because it's hot. I mean, it's really hot.
Hello and welcome to MidnightSilverCrafters.com. My name's Steve and I'll be your host. Today in this video, we're going to learn how to do jewelry casting and lost wax casting.
I'm out in the shop here today, and I'm going to make another video for you guys. It's been a little while since I made a video. But what I'm going to do, I got to thinking about it, and I want to cover two things. And one of them is what I do, silversmithing. And the other thing is what I do is lost wax casting. So I want to talk about both of those from start to finish. In other words, I want to talk about what it's going to take if you think you're going to maybe get into doing this, what it's going to take from start to finish, what you're going to need, what you're going to need to buy, start to finish. Okay, now I'm going to split it into two different videos, and one video is going to be about silversmithing. But this video is going to be about lost wax casting. So we're going to talk about lost wax casting today. And you can go out and you can spend a lot of money on a lot of equipment. Okay, and you might think that you got all this stuff, and because you spent a lot of money on all this stuff, that you're gonna, start doing a lot of stuff. Well, a lot of times people go out and they spend a lot of money on a lot of equipment, but then they find out they got the wrong equipment, or they didn't really get what they needed from the start. So it's really good to, it's really good to do some research, because I cover everything from start to finish. I got a lot of good videos. But we're going to talk about lost wax casting and casting jewelry today in this video. Now, the very first thing that you're going to have to realize is when you talk about jewelry casting or casting small items, okay, lost wax casting, the first thing you got to do is you got to have a way to melt your metal. Okay, now that's the first step, is melting your metal. If you can't melt metal, you cannot cast anything. So the very first thing you need to learn about is melting your metal. Now you got to ask yourself, what am I going to cast? What kind of metal do I want to work with? What kind of heat is it going to take to melt that metal? Okay, and you got to plan it all out so you end up with what you need, and you don't end up with a bunch of stuff that you really don't need. Okay, but melting your metal, now there's different ways to melt your metal. All right, but now I'm going to show you one thing. First off, I'm going to show you this. This right here, this is your typical welding torch. Okay, now this is what I use. I run this on propane, okay, and oxygen. And you're going to need to get the torch if you're gonna go with this route, okay? But I'm going to explain what it is and what it does, okay? But this torch runs on oxygen and propane, and it comes with two regulators. One's for oxygen, one's for propane. Okay, now this torch right here, what it does, every time I do a small casting, I use this torch to melt down my metal. Okay, when I say a small casting, I'm talking about maybe 3 to 5 rings in a small casting, or ingots. Okay, for like rolling out your own metal, making your ingots, you have to cast them. You get an ingot mold and you cast your metal in there. But you got to melt down your silver. Now this is great for melting silver. You don't need oxygen and acetylene. That's more heat than you need. But you do need the oxygen mixed in with the propane, because propane by itself is not going to get hot enough. You're not going to melt silver with any luck at all with just a propane torch. You need more heat than that. Okay, but this is what I use. Now, I'm going to tell you, the oxygen, my bottle is over there. It's empty at the moment. I'm getting a new bottle tomorrow. But the oxygen, if you buy a little tiny bottle of oxygen, like if you go to Harbor Freight and you buy one of those little small bottles of oxygen about that big, it's going to cost you a lot of money for oxygen, and it's not going to last very long. That little bottle will run out really quick. So your best bet is to get a big bottle, okay, and get the big, I think mine's 150 cubic feet, I believe, big tall one, and take it and get it filled, and it's about $30 to get it filled. But my big tall bottle will last me for about 4 months, okay, and I do a lot. I use it every day with this setup, oxygen and propane. Now, once you got your oxygen bottle and your regulators, these regulators right here, you can get a different type of torch. You don't have to use, I know this is a big bulky torch, but this is what I like, and this is what I do everything with this torch. I solder, I make my ingots, I do casting, I do all my annealing. See, that's another reason you're going to need the oxygen, is because for annealing, okay? But now, we're not talking about silversmithing, we're talking about lost wax casting. I don't want to mix them up, but you get one of these. Now there's a torch, it's called a Little Smith torch, and it's a little small, tiny little mini torch for jewelry making, and you can hook it right onto here. Once you got your regulators, okay, you can just get that, and you can run one of those little torches on your oxygen and propane. But you need the heat for melting metal, okay? For melting silver down, you're going to need some heat. Now that's your first thing, the very first thing. Now, I understand if you don't live in an area, if you don't have a place to safely use something like this, you're probably just going to have to, if you do use oxygen and propane, you're going to have to just get that little bottle of oxygen. But boy, it's real expensive that way. But there's other things that you can do.
Okay, I think I'm going to end it here for part one. If you are new, I would greatly appreciate it if you would think about subscribing to my channel. I think you'll really learn a lot on my channel about both silversmithing and lost wax casting. But if you do decide that you want to subscribe, if you could just do me a big favor, if you could just leave me a little note in the comments box and say I subscribe, that would just be great, and I'd really appreciate it. So, all right, well, just look for the link here, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to go right into part two.